everybody. Happy Arts Month to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this very early Saturday morning. Welcome to Filipino Forward, the best of Filipino creativity. We appreciate your presence, and this is the second day of the 10 Days of Arts initiative presented by Ayala Land as part of the National Arts Month celebration. It is with immense honor that we gather here today as we bring together an exceptional assembly of creative minds for stimulating and inspiring panel discussion. Thanks in part as well to our event partner, Vogue Philippines. And right now, we're excited to introduce to you our panelists. So without further ado, let's get down to it. Our first guest is truly an influential tastemaker in the world of Filipino fashion. She has established herself as a trailblazing designer where her luxury accessories become a mainstay in fashion editorials locally and globally. Acknowledged among Asia's most influential figures, she has now ventured into new heights, assuming the role of editor-in-chief at Vogue Philippines. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to the always beautiful Ms. Valdes. Good morning, Bea. Thank you. All right, joining us next is a creative who wears many hats. Formerly the managing editor of Lifestyle Asia, he has seamlessly transitioned into the role of managing editor of Vogue Philippines. His dynamic career mirrors a commitment to exploring the intersections of culture, lifestyle, and fashion. We're eager to dive into experiences and insights as he shares his expertise in shaping the editorial landscape. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Jacs Sampayan. Our next guest is a versatile creative force who has left an indelible mark in film and advertising. With a knack for storytelling and a keen eye for creativity, he never fails to bring a fresh perspective to whatever he does. You may recognize him from acclaimed films such as the award-winning Ang Babae sa Septic Tank, Shake, Rattle and Roll, and Call Me Tita, the former president of Publicis Manila. Please all welcome the very busy and very talented Mr. Marlon Rivera. Hello, Marlon. All right, in our fourth panelists, we're joined by a photographer celebrated for her cinematic and nostalgic fashion editorials, portraits, and advertisements. Her portfolio extends across collaborations with both local and global celebrities and artists. Despite her humble perspective on having a distinctive style, her work has resonated with audiences, creating a unique visual language that sets her apart. Let's all welcome the very charming Shaira Luna. Hello, Shaira. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to State of the Arts. Welcome to Samsung Performing Arts Theater. And welcome to Circuit Makati, the Center of Arts and Culture here in our city. Before we begin, everybody, I think it's best that we should all do a look back on how all of your careers have started. While all of them have gathered recognition and acclaim for their work, I think it's important to acknowledge, like many of us, they too embark on their careers as newcomers. So let's take a moment to dive into their creative journeys and discover the beginnings of their remarkable paths. So, panelists, for my initial question, I believe many of us can resonate with the experience of exploring career paths in the early stages. As we often find ourselves navigating and discovering our passions, I'm curious, what was your very first job? And was it related to what do you do now? Marlon?
No, 1948. Good morning. Good morning, guys. I believe that you can start and restart anytime. It's not a question of age. It's a question of like, what else do you want to do with your life? My first paid gig was as a props man for the opera house in CCP. So I have stage right, and then I would take care of the props, and then I would hand them to the actors and put them away after the performance. So that's my first paid gig as a props man in the theater.
Well, Marlon, did you think that with your very first gig, you'd end up into a path of being a creative?
Yes, I wanted to be on stage,
I see.
but I wasn't allowed on stage. I wanted to be in theater, so I really wanted to be in theater. So I pursued that. So I eventually directed for theater and acted in theater, but I didn't realize I'd get into even to fashion. No? So
Okay.
my first foray in fashion was I took a class of under Badong Bernal, scenic and costume design. So I learned how to sew clothes. So I learned how to do costume for theater. So that's my first fashion,
I
as
see.
fashion as I can call it. Yeah.
Right, right. Bea, did you always think you'll be in fashion?
No, actually, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go back because I think it might be interesting. My first job, I was a librarian
Oh, all
in a
right.
materials library at an interior design firm. So what that means is when an architect or a designer would come and they would tell me the nature of their project, they'll say, we're doing a luxury resort in Addis Ababa and we have to use turquoise and gold
Okay.
as accents. Then I kind of go through all of the materials, curate for them the ideas, the furniture, the fabric, the equipment, the finishes that might work for their project. So in a way, even though that was a starting point, it's very similar to what we do still today, whether that is working off a theme and then
All right.
finding elements and putting them together as a suggestion of what we might think will best express an idea. So
I see. I see.
it does have some traceability.
Right. Shaira, as a young kid, have you always been using a camera?
No, I actually hated the camera because my mom was such a stage mom. So she documented everything from the moment I was born. But funnily enough, my first job, if you can consider it a job, I was selling milk in a TV commercial when I was small. So I never thought I would end up in advertising, doing the exact same thing I did when I was 8 years old. And then fast forward to a couple of years later, I worked as a segment producer for a morning show.
Okay.
I was, I think, 12 or 13. I did that until I was 16, so I thought I was going to end up in media one way or another.
I see. Jacs, and you?
Actually, my first paid gig actually was similar to Bea's. I was an assistant for a medical library. So one of my jobs was actually making abstracts of medical journals. But my first full-time gig was I'm a lifer in publishing. So
Okay.
I started out as an editorial assistant. That was my first full-time gig for a magazine.
I see. Well, I think now that you're in your current careers, Bea as editor-in-chief of Vogue Philippines, Jacs as the managing editor of Vogue Philippines, and Marlon as our multi-hyphenate creative director, and Shaira, of course, as our photographer, we're curious to know about your process. So our aim this morning is to sort of like dive in and do some questions that not only pique the interest of those outside of the industry, but also provide valuable insights for aspiring creatives to perhaps take a similar path. So we'll start with Bea. For those that are not already familiar, can you walk us through a typical day of an editor-in-chief?
A typical day. I think honestly it changes from week to week because we have things that we concentrate on depending on how close the deadline is. But I would say a typical day for me would begin when I wake up. I do a lot of emails. And then when I do go to the office at about 10 a.m., we have a huge editorial meeting with how many people? Almost 30 people all together, where we update everybody on the issue we're working on, the projects that are oncoming, whether they're activations or dinners or other things, as well as maybe future issues. So we review every story, look at the process, look at the progress, and then after that we break down into smaller teams and do individual consultations and try and troubleshoot everything that's happening. For us, it's really important to see every single department, from beauty, culture, fashion, as well as digital, to see how we can support each other, making sure that the stories have individual voices but still follow a cohesive theme. So
When you're planning, is it chronological or does it overlap sometimes?
it overlaps.
I
So
see.
we might be working on 3 issues simultaneously. which we seem to be doing quite often because some of them have editorials that need long-term planning. They might be shot on location or with international collaboration. So this does take a little bit more months than maybe something that we can do in studio.
I see. In your leadership position, how do you foster collaboration among your editorial team to ensure a cohesive and engaging publication?
That's really easy. I mean, everybody works with everybody. Even though we do have departments, the fashion team will obviously help beauty and culture with all of the styling and suggesting of what creatives to work with or what photographer or maybe what kind of angles. So there isn't really a delineation of separate teams in terms of how the total product is done. It's really about everybody helping each other. So I think the collaboration has been there from day one. So we don't at all work in silos. It's been that way from the start.
Yeah. Well, I think it's obvious that balancing creativity and meeting practical publication goals can be challenging. As an editor-in-chief, how do you handle this balance in your editorial decision-making process?
By working a lot with Jacs, actually.
Okay.
I think everybody on the team has like their own strengths, and I think there are certain members of the team that have the overview and the insight that he has because of the 20 years work in publishing. So I think there's a lot of reverse mentorship, and I do rely on a lot of the team members to help make sure that we are as balanced between the needs of publishing and the needs of creative. And I think it isn't just my decision, it has always been a decision by the whole creative team.
I see. That might be a great segue to Jacs. Jacs, can you walk us through your key responsibilities that come with being a managing editor?
Actually, being a managing editor sometimes changes from magazine to magazine. The roles change sometimes, but certain constants are really more of the boring stuff about the publishing. I mean, a managing editor usually takes care of budgets and timelines, the logistical things, as well as copy, making sure that everything is up to par within standards of the magazine.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that it's boring, but I'd say writing can be challenging at times, and it's common to feel stuck or experience writer's block. How do you overcome those instances?
Actually, even because I also teach a class, I tell my students, like, whenever you feel stuck, you just have to step away for a moment from whatever it is you're looking at. Because when you're too focused on one thing, it can frustrate you.
Okay.
So what you can do is actually take a step back, do something else, put your energy into something else, and then come back to it later. So that you'll have more, if things are allowed to percolate in your brain, and then you can move forward.
Thank you, Bea. Thanks, Jacs. I'm going to move on to Marlon. Marlon, as a longtime creative director and a former president of a big ad agency, could you provide an overview of your role?
Look far, look deep, and look the part. As a creative director, first you should have to have a home-based skill. I mean, as a home-based skill is one of the skills that's essential to the whole team. Like, I'm a copywriter as an entry point, so you're supposed to have something there. Otherwise, you're called a muse. So writing was my home skill. You can be a art director, a broadcast producer, a designer, a stylist. Have a home-based skill. No? So that's essential. As a creative director, the creative director's job, as Jack said, it's a commerce and art, and it's really you're juggling four things. What is visible, meaning the marketing objectives, the materials that you're given. The invisible, the talents and the moods of your team, that what is possible, meaning what the work can be, and what is impossible. You're looking for the next big breakthrough in terms of creative output. So you're always juggling those four things. I don't find strategic work boring. I find it very, very interesting. So when you're looking at work, you're always judging it by, is this on strat? Is this what we talked about? Is it aligned? But as you grow older, you realize that it's not only what you want, but be prepared to be surprised. As what Bea said, like you could be looking at things, you have an expectation, but you see an image that really resonates. So be ready to do, to find what you need to find, but also be open to the possibility that the team can surprise you. You know, something. So it's like you're an alchemist, you're a fortune teller, you're a juggler in a Shibuya crossing. So that's really the work. So every day it's different because there are multiple accounts, multiple campaigns running simultaneously, client servicing. So there's client servicing because the creative director's work is really a directorship work. It's a position in the organization. It has a sueldo, it has expectations. So you have management responsibilities, you have creative responsibilities. But the bottom line is when you're juggling all those things, you're always looking for what is impossible and possible. That one new thing that can come out of all this juggling with the people. And that can only come from first commitment, authenticity, what they call wisdom, what they call taste, what they call all of that. As long as their brand codes, designer, the brands that you're selling, you're always thinking all these things. But in the end, when you sit down, when the S hits the fan, you're supposed to rely on what you really understand. So you're supposed to be interdisciplinary, read history. You're supposed to have the biggest view of everyone. I always found it to be a pressure because you want to find people who are better than you, always marry up in terms when you hire, but you're always forced to grow further and further and larger. So you understand the big picture, but you also understand the details of things. So that's the essential work.
Right. Marlon, I think I'd just like to do a follow-up with the statement you just said. As an artist and a creative as well, I think all of us, say in the performing arts world that I am involved in, all of us want to collaborate. But we find it difficult. So we needed like an artistic director or a leader to sort of like manage and foster that collaboration in your world. How do you ensure that all of these creatives, whether they're copywriters, designers, marketing people, photographers, collaborate and work in a cohesive way so that whatever output that you put out is very impactful?
Well, you can't do it alone. There's no such thing as a creative director solo. That doesn't work. You're supposed to work with people. So when you build your team, you're supposed to look for this is my take. I always like, my management style is to be redundant. You have to hire the right people so they can replace you very soon, so that you don't have to do a lot of work. So it's all about casting the right team. Sometimes when you're working with teams, there's ego, there's right. Sensitivities, there's all of those things. My personal take is that when I see something I don't like that is off strat, I never talk about that. I ignore the things that I don't like that are bad. I only react to what struck me. So like resonance, I get, oh, I like this. And second is what can be better. So I think it's counterintuitive to criticize your team. You're like, I don't like what you did. This is so bad. Nothing comes out of that. So I'd rather just be silent about it and focus on, this really works. I really like this one. And then if they keep on doing that, then you just have to figure out to do intervention, to train them, to inspire them. Sometimes the job is really just to be who you are. There's no career path for leadership.
Sure.
Either you are or you are. And sometimes your only job is to be present, to be a creative, a cultural guardrail. Sometimes it's not what you ask them to do. It's also critical what you allow people to do. So it's really it's a 24/7, 365,600 minutes sort of a job. And you have to be hyper aware that you have to trust the team. You can't do it alone.
Right.
So let them shine and you can relax.
That's right. Okay. In your long line of work, can you share one or two projects that you found particularly rewarding or challenging in your role as a creative director?
Since 1988, charot. I came in I was a copywriter and a broadcast producer when I came into the agency. So I was made associate creative director after 6 months of training, 2 months and a half of training. So I was accelerated. What I found the projects I like, of course, I like the whole Magnolia Nestle sort of a work that I did. That's part of the pitch. I was part of the pitch team, so I would pitch. So I have my own responsibilities, but I would pitch. So I'm really proud of the businesses I won.
Okay.
I'm a creative director, but it's the business, guys. I mean, it's how much business you bring in. I like my last stint as executive creative director for Nestle Philippines. So that's Nescafe, Milo, Nido. Like Vogue, it's a global brand. It's a big French Swiss brand. So you have a lot of codes that you need to hit, mandatories and so on and so forth. So it's hard to find a wiggle room. So I like our last campaign, like para kanino ka bumabangon. That one I like. I also like the smaller brands, like Only Bello Touches Your Skin Who Touches Yours. That's the Bello Essential that we launched. May Liwanag Ang Buhay. I like PS Bank Simple Lang because of the pitch that it changed the whole car loan business, because we took away the computations and said, we give you the car. So you don't show Calvary, you show heaven, and you get the car. So the ad's about cars. So I'm proud of work that I did that kind of pushed the business just a bit and the creativity a bit. Because I think that's our real job. I said the impossible, the visible, the invisible, the possible, but you have to push for a bit of that little impossibility that you can deliver for both the brand and your career. So, yeah, mga ganung mga galawan ang pinakagusto ko.
Thanks, Marlon. All right, I think I'm going to move on to Shaira, who I think admittedly, among all the creatives here on stage right now, is probably the most relatable. It's just because everybody thinks that they can be a photographer. But Shaira, what is a typical day like for a photographer?
Like Bea, probably. It varies week to week or even day to day. There are always many things running at the same time. There are shoots you have to plan, you have to attend meetings, oculars, a meeting with clients, because I don't think I focus just on like fashion editorials. There's a lot of commercial and advertising work that I have to do. And then on the side, I'm thinking about shoots I want to do on my own. My brain is just constantly wanting to create things and shoot. So I'm either contacting a team who can help me create that vision, or I'm researching. My day typically starts around 4 a.m. Again, emails, uploading files. I go straight to the shoot, and as Direct Marlon would probably work, you shoot it like it's edited already so that you have less work to do. I get home, I download the files, work on some other thing. It's nonstop, but I wouldn't have it any other way. If I have time, I'll thrift. I'll go on Carousel. I'll go on eBay, look for props.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you've mentioned it already. Is there a different process between preparing for a fashion photography versus a commercial one?
For sure. I think I am more nervous when it comes to fashion editorials because that isn't really my background. I think I just learned in the fashion industry, but commercial photography for me is very easy. It's become kind of like a technical exercise for me because in commercial photography, you have to, meet their lighting peg. You're selling one thing, but fashion editorials, you collaborate with so many more people who have their own point of view. You also have to kind of sell a story in a way. There's different lighting, different ways of storytelling. So even though you have more room to play, it makes you more nervous because you're also carrying everyone else's work with you. So it's really trying to bring that all together and trying to make a result that everyone feels like they've contributed to.
Well, whether it's fashion or commercial, I think our three panelists, we've been talking about collaboration a lot. How do you collaborate with your clients or your brands to ensure that the photography aligns with their vision and their goals?
I'm always present during meetings.
Okay.
Even if I am in a shoot, I will excuse myself because I want to understand what the goal is, because like magazines, they all have different codes. All advertising agencies have their own kind of culture that you have to learn how to work with. In fashion, it's a bit more relaxed, but when it comes to there's just so much money, to be honest, involved, and you don't want to waste anyone's time. It's so much planning. It's meeting bosses from Southeast Asia, so there's a different work culture for sure. Even the way you talk has to be a little bit different. The way you present things has to be different. But at the end of the day, if I want to do a creative shoot, then I'll just go back to my normal self and DM
I see.
hair and makeup. So you have
Well, speaking of your creative self, your love for fashion is very evident, especially with your frequent thrift shopping. Could you share how your current fashion trends play a role in influencing your work?
If I were to be completely honest, I don't think I am really on trend. I'm quite scared of trends. I typically learn about them from Instagram or from reading magazines. What I do know are trends from the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, and I think that's what always ends up in my work. So I guess the approach or the way I present it is more now, but it's with things from the past. So I'm just trying to blend everything into one image.
Right. I think I'm going to ask this for everybody. Growing up as an artist, I was always told that learning is never done. I've since, long retired from dance, but I'm still trying to learn every day. I pass it on to my current job as an arts manager. Is it the same for creative professionals like yourselves, having all these years of experience? Do you wake up one day and say, hey, I didn't realize that I could have done a certain way this way. Maybe I should try it that way. So anybody can chime in.
You never stop learning. I think when you stop learning, you're dead. I mean, that's the only time you sabi ni Donatella Versace, di ba? You have to, I don't know if it's a personal thing or maybe we all share this idea that I can't imagine not being curious about things every day. Every day. I mean, what is that heart shape on Pluto? What is that? Is that a methane field? So my mind is always looking for things to understand and to learn. I get really, really happy when I understand things. I mean, it's my biggest joy on earth, to solve things, to figure things out. So I'm always looking at things. I'm a social media junkie.
Okay.
I'm a doom scroller. And my history has always been learn new skills. You have to learn new skills every day. I think neuroplasticity, obviously you need to get your mind going. So for me, when I meet new people, I learn new stuff. There is no learning experience I did not enjoy. I mean, anything that I see. I will also go to Ukay and I also go. So I'm always curious about what's happening. The difference is how do you filter that and bring that to your work. I mean, you can be open to everything, but you cannot be everything. You get it? You have to have some kind of filter in your head. I like this. So that's called discrimination. Maybe it's called age. But you need to understand what fits into who you are also. Because if you accept everything to be true or to be, you'll have anxiety. I mean, you have anxiety. I mean, I dress like this in the most boring way. Bumalik na naman yung norm ko or uso na naman kami. Uso na ulit kami, di ba? Uso na naman ulit kami. So you have to understand, be open to everything, learn everything, but understand as an editor would think. You have to understand, but what really fits? What makes sense to me? What makes sense in my life? It comes with a bit of age, so you don't consume everything without any filtering. So I mean that's now I'm learning how to paint. Obviously, Aaron is here. I've been painting for the last 14 months, every day of my life. I'm kind of that person. So I've been painting every day, and I'm learning a lot from it. So I'm now learning how to mount the work and preservation and all those things. So you can. There's no. Is there a day that you're not learning anything? I mean, I may be purposive learner. I'm a purposive learner kasi. Yun.
Marlon is such an inspiration for me. He just never stops creating and putting out work. when I learned that you can be someone like Direct Marlon, I think that really kind of affirmed like what I've been trying to do since I started photography. There's not a week I don't do personal work. I am always curious about how things are gonna look. I try to like reverse engineer shoots from the past, try to understand how it was lit or how how certain fashion trends influence the images or music especially. So I keep shooting as much as I can. I keep creating stuff so that when the time comes, like a certain magazine needs a certain kind of look, I'll be like, oh, maybe this fits there, or maybe it'll work the way I lit it. So it's just always trying to create something and being curious, and it just never ends. It's so much fun, I think, for both of us. That's why I love you so much. Yeah, I'm very inspired by Jack Marlon.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay.
I mean, I think curiosity is just part of the job description. If you're a creative, you need to be always asking questions. Like, especially even for a writer, writing is about filling a well in your head with as much context and information as you can, so you understand what you are writing about. Like, you might end up like one day, like for example, like a month ago, I was like googling sandblasting for some reason because I wanted to understand what it was. But it's all about that, understanding terms, understanding context and history and all these things. If you become complacent and satisfied, that's when you die. When you die creatively, you need to be always like pushing and pushing.
Right. I remember my teacher told me that you're only as good as your last bow. As soon as you're done and you leave the stage, you're on to the next. I think, Bea, that's sort of, I kind of want to relate that to, say, Vogue. Say, with something like the Apo Wang cover, that it's been so celebrated. Remember sending you a text, it's like, Bea, it's in SNL. How do you manage to keep inspired and say that, you know what? Sure, it's been celebrated, but work does not stop there.
Yes, absolutely. For us, it was always like people were asking, how do you top that? And I said, it isn't about a peak. I said, it's a continuing journey. It's a continuing conversation. And what we keep on trying to do is show the diversity of actually the Filipino culture in all its many, many voices. And so for us, I think after her, we had an edition about 33 cool kids, as we used to call them, just young people who, if you look at it from the surface, seem so different from her story, but we always try and find a commonality. So again, it isn't, as you say, it isn't just the last bow. It really is the body of work, I think, that makes the brand strong, the vision strong, and our mission from words into reality. And then I think also that our motivations are very interesting, because when people ask me like, what's your favorite cover? I will always say the next one. So I think that is the way that we kind of train ourselves to always give 100%, because we know that every story we do is important and will be important.
Right. I think it's safe to assume we're all here right now because we love what we do. We love our jobs. If I may ask our panelists, what is one or something, or what do you love most about your work?
Go.
Well, I think even after all these years, I still get the thrill when something I've done is read. That's what I mean. If you're a professional writer, you're not writing for yourself. You're writing for an audience. So when an audience consumes and react to something that you've done, that's a thrill that never gets old.
Shaira?
I think I get to live out a sort of fairy tale every time I work. I grew up reading a lot of storybooks and fiction, so I think that's why my work isn't the photojournalistic type per se. So I love that with the skills that I've learned, I get to try to create like these worlds and get other people in it. I think it just opens up your mind to other ways of creating things or other ways of seeing things or presenting things, and getting to work with so many different people every day. And trying to be a magician, like a juggler, a psychologist. You get to wear many hats at once in this job. And I hope that also inspires other people to dive into it and just put in the work.
Marlon, do you want to say something?
I like that feeling that you get when you see things click. Like when I say a campaign, a fashion image, a fashion collection, anything that you see it click. Because that's sort of my persona. I'm always running towards the next corner of the street, trying to see what's gonna come in, what's gonna come in. As a kid, I don't want to sleep because I don't want to miss out on things. Alam mo, ayokong, kasi pag natulog na ako, I don't know what they'll talk about. So I'm always curious about what's gonna happen next. Next is my drug. So I would look at the next corner. So my joy really is when you turn and say, wow, we did that? We did that? That's something that we did. So that never gets old for me to see something new. I guess the process of the first moment you say, let there be light, and you see the thing that you made. And it's always, ako kilig na kilig ako doon eh. So,
Kilig is the
yeah,
word.
that I'm a junkie for that thing that everything happens just for that brief moment, and it becomes permanent. It becomes a cover, an image.
Right. Bea, want to add something?
Actually, if I'm going to be very honest, what I love most about working with the magazine is probably working with the team. As I came from 20 years working with my sister, who I absolutely loved working with. It was such a cohesion. There was no hierarchy, right? It was just sisterhood. And to come and be in a team of so many people who kind of share the same vision, are relentless, feel the same way, and believe in the same things. For me, that has been really eye-opening, really astounding. And whether the things we do work or work better than we expected, the gift is that no matter what, we have this relationship together that is creative, that is supportive, and very, very adventurous. And I think for me, that has actually been the part that I love most.